tell me and spell your name for the camera?
Absolutely. My name is Nancy Gee, and it's spelled G-E-E.
Okay, and your title?
I'm the director of the Center for Human-Animal Interaction.
Okay, and your PhD, correct?
Yes, so I'm a professor of psychiatry, and I also hold the Bill Balaban Chair in Human-Animal Interaction.
Okay, so how long have you been, wait, you said you haven't been here in the Richmond area too long at all.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
I think
Here.
it's because there's noise, there's
I'm gonna
sound.
take this off of this.
Okay, thank you.
How long have you been in the Richmond area?
A year and a half.
And how long have you been involved with a program like this, the Dogs on Call programs?
Dogs on Call is new to me, but I've had 5 therapy dogs of my own, and I've been doing therapy dog research for 15, 16 years.
Okay, so what does it mean to you to be a part of this program?
You know, I have to tell you, I am so honored and privileged to have this position. I'm just delighted to be able to do this. I've seen firsthand what our teams do and the difference that they make. And I tell you, there are times when there is not a dry eye in the room. Just, it is incredibly impactful in that moment. I mean, I've seen Pam and Beckett go and visit the children who are having chemotherapy, and you know, the child is obviously not feeling well, the parents are stressed, and just for that moment, that child forgets what's happening, and they focus on the fact that there's this dog there, and they just pet that dog. And just for that moment, everything else in the world seems to go away, and they just have that opportunity to have a little bit of normalcy at a time when they're so stressed and so scared and have so much anxiety.
You talked about the research behind this to show that there are things happening in our bodies biologically that is coinciding with the way we're feeling in our minds and the way our hearts make us feel.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is one of the things that I do. I'm involved in a number of research projects where we're looking at the efficacy of these animals interacting with humans. And so what we've found is decreases in anxiety, decreases in fear for dogs on call interactions. Other research has shown things like reductions in blood pressure, reductions in cortisol, which is your stress hormone, increases in oxytocin, which is kind of that bonding feel-good hormone. So when a human looks at a dog and you look into their eyes, that's when we release oxytocin. But what is amazing about this relationship, this bond that we share with animals, is so do they. So the dog also releases oxytocin when we stroke them. Long, slow strokes down the body seem to really reduce, cause them to release oxytocin.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And how do you empirically study this? How does that work?
So there are a number of ways, but some of it can be challenging because one of the things about science is we like to blind people to the treatment, but everybody knows when the dog comes in the room. And so we have to find other unique and creative ways to study the situation. So we do things like take salivary oxytocin, and so a person basically provides a saliva sample and we can measure the oxytocin that they secrete through saliva. And so it doesn't matter whether they know the animal's there or not. The point is that they give the same sample across each of the conditions. So we'll, for instance, have a condition where they interact with a dog, or another condition, maybe they interact with a stuffed animal, or they do a yoga relaxation, or they have a treatment as usual. So maybe it's a classroom situation. And then we compare their saliva samples across each of those conditions, and we see where the oxytocin or cortisol is released. And so we see decreases in cortisol when the dog's present. And that's even compared to a yoga relaxation condition. So yoga is designed to help us relax, and just visiting with a dog that isn't necessarily designed to make you relax does actually help you relax.
Wow, that's amazing. Have you received any grants since the pandemic, especially now that we're knowing the effects that this pandemic has had on our mental health and on so many patients and staff members? Has there been any future-oriented programs that you're looking at right now to study the impact this pandemic has had?
Absolutely. So Mars Pet Care gave us a nice grant in order to look at loneliness in older adults in rehabilitation centers. We're going to go to Sheltering Arms Institute, and we're going to bring our Dogs on Call teams there, and we're going to take a look at the efficacy of seeing those dogs over time and whether that alters their loneliness. As you can imagine, during the pandemic, loneliness is an issue. But even before the pandemic, loneliness was considered to be at epidemic proportions. And so now we have this unique opportunity, because of this grant, to go and take a look specifically at loneliness and other health outcomes and trajectories of change across those patients. So the patients who receive the dog, what happens? Is their loneliness reduced? What happens to their other sort of healthcare related outcomes? Are those reduced relative to the other conditions?
Wow, that's amazing. And did you tell me how much that grant was for?
$50,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
We're delighted to be doing this work. And as soon as we get back into the hospital, which is just around the corner, we're going to be able to start that study. So we're very excited about it.
So I imagine everyone's getting really excited to hear that the dogs are going to be able to come back soon.
You have no idea. This pandemic, just being out of the hospital, we get requests constantly for dogs on call visits, but healthcare workers especially need us to be back in the hospital. And thankfully that's happening now. The reason we needed to be out of the hospital, it was pretty clear. We just didn't know enough about COVID to begin with. We wanted to keep everybody safe. But now we're learning more about COVID. We're learning about dogs as a potential vector, and it turns out they're not a great vector for the spread of COVID. And so it's looking like it is safe to get back in the hospital. Plus the vaccine's really helping that as well. So that's one of the things, our teams, our dog handlers are getting vaccinated. So now it's safe for everyone. And so we are just around the corner about to reactivate.
Great job.